Welcome to our ethical issue presentation on teacher tenure. Is it fair for kids? As presented by Anne Marie Higgins, Adina Ware, and Kevin Warnicki. The history of teacher tenure parallels similar labor movements during the late 19th century. Just as workers in the steel and automotive industries fought for better workplace conditions and fair wages, teachers sought protection from parents and administrators who influenced lesson plans and materials. This was a time when there were little to no policies in place to protect teachers from being fired. Without job protection, teachers for literally any reason could be fired. Race, creed, gender, favoritism, and political affiliation were some of the most common firing reasons for teachers before 1885. Women could even be fired for becoming pregnant. In 1887, nearly 10,000 teachers met in Chicago for the first ever conference of the National Educators Association, now one of the country's most powerful teachers' unions. The topic of teachers' tenure led the meeting agenda, which by the turn of the century, tenure had become a hot button some politicians preferred to avoid. In the wake of the Great Depression, prominent teacher unions formed to fight for job protection and benefits, and by the mid-1950s, 80% of all K through 12 teachers were tenured. Essentially, tenure is a contract that ensures a teacher's employment. Teacher tenure is a policy that prevents teachers from being terminated without just cause. In most states, the award of tenure is given to public school teachers who have served a certain time period, usually between 3 to 5 years. In most cases, termination of tenured teachers can only take place when severe misconduct or incompetence is established. Even in cases of blatant irresponsibility, misbehavior, or lack of performance, it is very difficult to dismiss a tenured teacher, and the dismissal process can be expensive and time-consuming. As of 2008, 2.3 million teachers in America are tenured, and generally speaking have preference over probationary faculty. Tenure removes incentives for teachers to put more than the minimum effort and to focus on improving their teaching. A June 2009 study by the New Teacher Project found that 81% of high school administrators knew of a poorly performing tenured teacher at their school. However, 86% of administrators said they do not always pursue dismissal of teachers because of the costly and time-consuming process. It can take up to 335 days to remove a tenured teacher in Michigan before the courts get involved. It costs an average of $250,000 to fire a teacher in New York City. New York spent an estimated $30 million a year paying approximately 600 teachers tenured accused of incompetence and wrongdoing to report to reassignment centers, sometimes called rubber rooms, where they were paid their full salaries to sit and essentially do nothing. On June 2010, that workaround finally ended. Former D.C. Schools Chancellor Michelle Reed said in 2008, "Tenure is the holy grail of teacher unions, but it has no educational value for kids. It only benefits adults." An October 2006 survey reports that 91% of school board presidents either agreed or strongly agreed that tenure impedes the dismissal of underperforming teachers. Also, 60% believe that tenure does not promote fair evaluations. Opponents of tenure argue that it perpetuates mediocrity in schools and lowers accountability. A recent study by the New Teacher Project reports that 81% of schools admit to having a low-performing tenured teacher, but over half of those schools will not act because of tenured laws. The following video discusses teacher tenure as it relates to the case of Vergara versus California, with Choice Media highlighting tenure on trial in California.
The defense is rested in the Vergara versus California trial.
We have 9 California school children that are seeking to ensure the promise in the California Constitution of equal educational opportunity for all public school children.
Since January 27th, the case filed by a group of concerned students has been challenging the lack of teacher accountability that they believe is a result of tenure and seniority privileges. The students have proceeded with the help of entrepreneur Dave Welch, who founded the nonprofit group Students Matter. Their goal, according to their website, is simple: reward and retain passionate, motivating, effective teachers and hold those accountable who are failing our children. Many have since testified alongside the students, including a principal, as well as teachers who strongly disapprove of the last-in, first-out based layoffs. But the most compelling testimony may have come from the students.
Well, I see education as a pathway to success in order to be something in the future.
The fact that I'm still in high school, I am liable to receive another extremely bad teacher within this final semester, and that's something I can't afford.
Attorney Marcellus McRae is supporting the students. He spoke to Choice Media earlier today.
You know, I think it's very interesting how when you start trying to have an intelligent, rational discussion about the harm that these statutes are inflicting on California school children by causing districts to have grossly ineffective teachers that they can't dismiss, that you get out the fear-mongering and the parade of horribles. First of all, let's dispel a basic point here. You often hear from the state defendants and the interveners that the case is an effort to try to eviscerate due process. The protections that the teachers have in the state of California against dismissal are not due process. They're excessive statutory protections that other employees do not have, that cost too much money and take too much time, and create a default where we cannot exit grossly ineffective teachers that harm the life outcomes of California students.
Patricia Levesque, something tells me that you would be supportive of the plaintiff's side in this trial, right?
You know, absolutely. Every child deserves a high-quality teacher every year in every classroom. That's what we should want for our kids. And clearly the laws in the state of California are focused more on the adults in the system. And what this case is about is making sure the laws focus on the students, making sure principals or administrators have the ability to have effective teachers.
Here is your problem, Patricia. You support impetuous principals who can be nepotistic and use favoritism to fire the people that don't kiss up to them enough, and they will get rid of all the experienced teachers who cost the district more, and you are for all that. You want to just privatize the system and drive out the expensive good teachers who have experience and just make everyone 23 years old. That's what you want to do because you support the plaintiffs.
You know, if you really have a strong accountability system that is transparent and holds schools accountable for student learning, it would be in the principal's own self-interest to make sure he had the best teachers in every classroom if he were going to be measured on the performance and the learning of the kids in the school. And so I think it's really important. You have to have strong accountability and measurement. You have to have real consequences. And you also have to have the tools and the policies in place that let principals keep and incentivize and retain effective teachers. And you can't, handcuff them with educators that they may know in their hearts, they may know from evidence should not be ones that are in the classroom.
At the elementary and high school level, tenure has evolved from the original understanding of due process to the universal style job for life. In most states, teachers are awarded tenure after only a few years, at which time they become almost impossible to fire. The main function of these laws is to help bad teachers keep their jobs. Consider New York City. The New York Daily News reports that over the past 3 years, just 88 out of 80,000 city school teachers have lost their jobs for poor performance. Things are no better in New York as a whole. The Albany Times Union looked at what was going on outside New York City and discovered some shocking data. Of 132,000 teachers, only 32 were fired for any reason between 2006 and 2011. In 2009, the Los Angeles Times reported that fewer than 2% of teachers in Los Angeles are denied tenure during the 2-year probationary period after being hired. And once they have tenure, there's no getting rid of them. Between 1995 and 2000, only 112 Los Angeles tenured teachers faced termination. 11 per year out of 43,000, and that's in a school district where the graduation rate in 2003 was just 51%. And in 10 years, only about 47 out of 100,000 teachers were actually terminated from New Jersey schools. With such alarming statistics, a call to action is in order. We honestly must reform tenure and evaluate teachers on the basis of their individual performance. And that call to action is underway, as reported in an article published by Casey Given, an author for The Hill, in July 2014, where he writes, states are pushing on education reforms. In Philadelphia, the city's public school system seeks to pull itself out of a financial rut by laying off 100 teachers, some of whom are tenured. In California, the Golden State's tenure system was recently ruled unconstitutional after a group of students argued in court that it interfered with the government's obligation to provide a quality education. The case was given rise to a similar challenge in New York City, laying the path for future legal battles across the country. However, even with these victories, there is a challenge, and that is with teacher unions. Teacher organizations have not promoted post-tenure review and have opposed merit pay, partially because of the justifiable fear that the process will be tied to test results and controlled by state legislators. But it is easier to play the role of victims, as too many local teacher organizations have done, than it is to provide strong professional leadership in changing the process. Policymakers and educators must coordinate in developing effective multiple modes of teacher review and in changing the whole system of teacher evaluation, teacher support, and teacher rewards. So how do we solve the problem and begin to evaluate teachers on the basis of their individual performance? First of all, we need to provide security of employment to protect academic freedom for our teachers. However, not at the expense of maintaining a teacher's employment that are not fulfilling their responsibility as a teacher, or in other words, are rotten apples in the system. We need to replace teacher tenure with measurable teacher responsibilities, industry benchmarks and goals, fair and impartial evaluation processes, and reward teachers with fair salary and compensation packages based on defined performance metrics. We need a system where teachers are rewarded based on multiple measurements that include test results, peer and administrator observation, and student feedback. So, bottom line, we need to eliminate teacher tenure. Public sector unions should stop tailoring their demands to the least common denominator among their ranks and instead agree for what's best for teachers and students alike, namely ending tenure. While tenure played an important role protecting quality teachers from unjustified layoffs through American history, it has been warped throughout the decades to protect poor teachers from very justified firings. American school children deserve better. Thank you.